Today I thought would be the perfect day to do a little bit of thrift store shopping. I have some items that I need to take to the thrift store. I tend to keep the majority of my DIYs. I do decorate with them. I like the things that we make at Jenny's place, but every once in a while my decor closet gets a little full and I need to bring some things to the thrift store, and sometimes like today, so that I can make room for a few extra things that I have in mind. So that is what we're going to do. But before we do that, I need to pack up that stuff. So we're going to head downstairs to get those things together, and then we're going to go shopping, and then we're going to do some DIYing. It's going to be a fun day.
I watch you as you drive. Do you know I'm looking? And I can't help but smile. Do you know how much I love you? You put my favorite song on.
Okay, we're gonna pop around to the side where we can deliver our stuff, and then we're gonna go inside and see what we can find.
I put my feet up and we just sing along. And I can't help but feeling, just loving this moment. Can we stay here?
Okay, now that we've donated everything, we can go and find some new things to bring home.
Here forever. I'm loving this moment. Can we stay here together? If I could stop the time, don't you know that I would? 'Cause I'm just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? Forever.
Oh, too bad there's a chip on it, or I would totally get it.
Forever. Forever. I watch you as you sleep. You don't know I'm looking. With you everything's complete.
Okay, that was successful. So I think we're gonna stop and pick up a new heat gun. I have some DIY ideas to do with that new burning paste that I got that I'm just in love with. And then I think we might even stop to get ourselves a Starbucks just to reward ourselves for a job well done. And then we'll head home and start to DIY.
Do you know how much I love you? I put your favorite song on just to wake you up. When I dance around, I can't help but feeling, just loving this moment. Can we stay here?
Okay, we got the heat gun, and while I was there, I also picked up a can of Rust-Oleum top coat for one of the projects that we're gonna work on, because I didn't put the lid on properly. I'm really bad for that. Does anyone else do that? Forget to put the lids on properly? I do it all the time. It's a very bad habit. But so I had to pick up another can of top coat for one of the DIY ideas I had. And I also decided to go with the more expensive Wagner heat gun as opposed to the Black & Decker one. I looked it up quickly for some reviews. I'm not sure if I've made the right decision. It is the one tool that for whatever reason hubby and I don't have in our workshop. So again, hoping I got the right one. If you guys have a recommendation on a really good heat gun, leave it in the comments below. I'd love to know, but I'm hoping that this one will work really well. So because I spent a bit more than I planned on, I think we're gonna skip that Starbucks coffee and head back to the AJP studio and get started on those DIYs.
One of the thrift store finds that I brought home was this Bombay picture holder that I had a totally different idea for. I'm not going to be using this for photographs. We're going to be using this for something rather unique. I started by removing all of the inserts, and then I removed all of the glass portions where the pictures are supposed to go. Then I gave the whole thing a quick wipe down with a wet cloth. The part that held the pictures actually just slid out really easily, so I removed those and I set those aside. We're going to do something with those in a bit. I also removed the knob at the top. Since we got that new heat gun, I thought it would be fun to create that cracked crinkle effect using some Elmer's glue and some white chalk paint. This is a super simple technique. To create this simple effect. All you need to do is apply a thin coat of Elmer's glue to your object that you're painting. Next, go in with a nice thick coat of chalk paint. I'm just using white chalk paint from Folk Art here, and you're going to apply that over top of the Elmer's glue. Then you go in with your heat gun and you just give it a quick blast of that hot air, moving that heat gun around constantly so that you don't burn the paint or create any bubbling. Now, if you find in some areas it's a little too light once you've applied the heat, no big deal. Just go in with whatever paint is left over on your paintbrush and just lightly paint that over any areas where you found it was just a tad too light. I also wanted to make sure that I got any areas that was left over, such as this part where you put your pictures back in. And I just used a distress paint to do this. I didn't use any of the glue. Now for the little knob that goes at the top of the picture box, I just went in with a little bit of antique gold rub and buff and gave that a quick coat. I didn't just do this to the little knob at the top, I also did this to all of the hardware in the box, including the little feet at the bottom. Next, I went on to Canva and created some free printables. You'll be able to find the link to my at Jenny's Place free printable library in the description box below. And I just created the seed packet using some Canva images. Then I printed those out on my printer.
Oh my goodness, look at this. I printed it on the label paper. Look at that. Okay, I'm gonna have to print that again.
Cut them out and then replace them back into the box where the pictures would have gone. Then using a little bit of sandpaper, I just distressed the whole thing just a little bit more. Then I put my seed packets into each of the little sections because now this is how I'm going to store all of my seeds for my garden. This is going to make it so easy to keep everything organized, and I'll be able to leave it out and it will look so cute. I absolutely love how this turned out, but I'd like to know what you think of this idea. I have a few quick items that I picked up from the thrift store that I'm not actually going to DIY with, but I totally wanted to share. So one of them was this vase. Yes, I got it. I'm not sure why. It's not really my style. It's just spoke to me, and I think it's going to work out really well in the craft room makeover I have planned for the AJP studio. So you'll have to stay tuned for that. But I'm a sucker for anything teal, and yeah, I can't explain this. Sometimes you just buy something normally you might not, but for whatever reason, you just find it incredibly beautiful. So, yeah, this. Okay, this DIY didn't go exactly to plan. You're gonna see why. I found this ceramic jug at the thrift store. I loved the shape. I did not love the color combo. So I knew it was going to need a quick spray paint. Unfortunately, outside it is completely winter, and inside our garage, hubby is working on our new truck. So this meant I had to get a little creative. So I went down to the man bathroom in the basement to give this a quick coat of spray paint. And this is where things went a little haywire. That night, hubby and I were going to our friend's place for a dinner party, and so showers were taken in between spraying, and I think it might have been the humidity, but something definitely went wrong. As you can see here, that beautiful finish I had became all textury and not what I was expecting. But that's okay. That's the brilliance of DIYing. If something goes a little wrong, sometimes you just work with it. So instead of going with my original idea, instead I decided to go in with a little bit of antiquing wax on a makeup sponge, and I just pounced that up and down over small areas of the vase, and then I went in with a damp cloth and pounced that up and down over top of the antiquing wax, creating this faux stone look. I also added a little bit of that antiquing wax to the lip of the jug, and I left the inside that dark brown color because it just made it look that much more realistic. And here is the finished look. I think ended up looking really good. It wasn't what I expected, it wasn't what I was going for, but in the end, I'm not hating this. I'm actually liking it. Sometimes your fails end up being your biggest winners, and I was just wondering what would be one of your DIYs that went sideways but ended up being one you actually really liked in the end. Another thing I grabbed was this little wooden ball. It's quite solid and heavy, and I love its color and its natural wood, and it sits quite nicely, and it would just be perfect on a tray or on a tabletop display. There's definitely a lot of different ways you could decorate. Our home is an old farmhouse that was built over 100 years ago. So when I say we have a small bathroom, I mean we have a small bathroom. We also have one of those old-fashioned clawfoot bathtubs and really no counter space to be found. So when I came across this little pedestal table, I knew immediately where it was going to go. And since we bought that heat gun, we're going to use that heat gun again. Her size was right. I liked her shape. I just was not a fan at all of this farmhousey, folksy, cutesy motif. So we're definitely going to have to deal with that. As always, I gave it a quick wipe down with a damp cloth. As I was wiping it down, I became aware of the fact that the legs were a bit wobbly, and I also discovered that this entire thing came completely apart. It ended up being super handy. So once I had all the pieces dismantled, I decided to go in with a little bit of Art Minds antiquing wax. I often use Art Minds antiquing wax because I bought it on sale at Michael's. I got a ton of it, so until I'm done with it, I'll be using it. But really, any antiquing wax that you like will work just as well. I basically just want to make this look like wood and cover up that original paint job. And it definitely took a couple of coats to get this accomplished. Once I had all the pieces completely covered with that antiquing wax, I let it dry overnight. Then, just like we did with that first DIY with the seed kit, we're going to apply some of that Elmer's glue to each of the pieces of the table and let that sit for a minute till it gets a bit tacky. Apply that white chalk paint. This time I'm going in with some folk art white chalk paint, and I think it's called, I'm not even going to attempt to say it. It's the white one. And you're just going to apply a nice thick coat of that white chalk paint over top of the tacky glue. Let that sit for a minute and then go in with that heat gun and give it a good blast of hot air, creating those delightful cracks and letting that dark color underneath pop through. Now for the tabletop part, I found it easiest to do this in sections, so I did it a third at a time. Again, go in with that Elmer's glue and a foam brush and apply a nice even coat over top of the entire surface, overlaying a little bit on your original part that you just finished. Then apply some of that white chalk paint, again nice and thickly. The thicker you get it on the first go, the better. And again, overlaying that a little bit over top of your first coat. Let it sit a minute until those natural cracks start to form on the paint. And then grab your heat gun and again, just moving it back and forth over top of that paint the entire time. Don't ever let it just sit too long or you could burn the paint, and then you'll start to see that those delightful cracks start to form. Then just move on to the last part of the tabletop, again applying the glue, the chalk paint over top, and then using your heat gun to create those cracks. And then we're just going to let this rest overnight. The next day I went in with some painter's tape and sectioned off a little nautical stripe on the top of the tabletop. Then using a bit more of that Elmer's glue, I went in and painted in the areas that were exposed. Waited a minute and then took some folk art chalk paint in oatmeal and a stenciling brush, applied that over top of the glue, but in a really distressed fashion. And then I went in with that heat gun again and created those cracks. And because this is going into our bathroom and I am going to be using it as a table, I finished it off with a quick top coat. I am so happy with the way that this turned out. It is going to look beautiful in our bathroom, and I'm going to be able to use it for those moments where I actually get to pamper myself for a minute. A thermometer. I got a thermometer. I'm not even sure we really needed a new one, but this is definitely the weirdest thing I've ever purchased at the thrift store. What is the weirdest thing you've ever bought? Okay, honestly, I'm just gonna end up using this as a teapot. I love the color. I am a sucker for anything teal. But for this video purpose, I thought we would do a cute, quick little DIY with it. Using some tape, I just taped off a little grid so that I would end up with a really rudimentary frog. But this is going to make it so much easier to get all of your little flower stems to stand upright. Now, you could totally go for real here, but I had a bunch of faux peonies that I got from the dollar store a few years back, and they just look really realistic, so I thought that they would work just fine. Arrange the taller flowers at the top and then work your way down. This will give you the fullest look, and that's it. You're done. This was super simple. I'm gonna leave this out for the spring months, but then come summer, this little beauty will be making my tea. Seriously, total sucker for anything teal, especially teal mugs. In fact, none of my mugs match. The only rule is they have to fall within the teal mint family. So all of our mugs are different and all of our mugs are this color. But I loved the shape. It's not really perfect. It's not really perfect. It actually kind of looks handmade and it has nice little speckles in it, and I thought that this would just be a cute mug to have for spring. And it should somewhat match my teapot, so I had to bring it home. Another one of my thrift store finds was this red crate that unfortunately was made from particle board. It wasn't made of real wood, and I wasn't a fan of the color or the sloppy motif on the front. It looks like someone might have DIY'd this, but I did like the shape, so we're gonna work with this. So first, of course, I gave it that quick wipe down, which you always need to make sure you do when you bring something home from the thrift store or a garage sale. And then I really didn't want to fight with this paint on the front, so I just sanded that away and it wiped off really easily. And then I went in with, again, a little bit of that Art Minds antiquing wax. I gave the entire thing, both outside and inside, and the handle 2 coat of the antiquing wax, allowing it to dry overnight in between coats. Once that was completely dried, we're going to do that crackle effect again, only this time we're going to do it a little differently. So we're going to start again by applying just a nice even coat of that Elmer's glue on one piece of the crate at a time. And then I painted that with some folk art chalk paint in Seaside Villa, and then went in with the heat gun and again moving it all over the place, allowing those cracks to form. Then once that was done, I went in with a little bit more of that Elmer's glue and then covered both the Elmer's glue and the teal paint with some white chalk paint. Again, going in nice and thickly, trying to get the entire thing covered in one go. Then going in again with that heat gun, creating those delightful cracks both on the inside, the outside, and even the handle. Then for a little added touch, I wet distressed the sides and then went in with a little bit of sandpaper and sanded down whatever area sort of wanted to give away, creating this multi-layered effect that I think just looks so beautiful. If you enjoyed that, make sure you subscribe. Give me a thumbs up. If you hit that notification bell, it'll let you know the next time I upload. Oh, and you might enjoy these.